The iPhone 14 Pro is undoubtedly Apple's best iPhone yet. I'm sure Apple actually said that at the keynote last year.
iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max, the best iPhones we've ever created.
It is true, although it's not perfect, but it's currently the best option and honestly the best iPhone that I've been using for nearly a year. And I know this title says 1 year later, and it's technically only been like barely 11 months, but new iPhones are coming out next month, and so I think we're close enough. So I'm going to chalk this up as my 1 year later review for the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max. I've been using the iPhone 14 Pro Max since day one, except for a few weeks of a weird experimental phase where I wanted to try the 14 Pro. But quickly I realized I like big phones, and I cannot lie. I also use my phone. That was such a bad joke. I also use my phones without a case. So if you're wondering how well it's held up over the last year, I'd say it's done a pretty good job. There's a few scratches on the screen here and some good wear and tear around the edges, especially like this edge here because, well, I've dropped it quite a few times. But overall, it's in really good shape. And so if you're thinking about using your phone without a case, get Apple Care for sure, but also it's not that bad. You should be fine. This is also the space black iPhone 14 Pro Max, and in my opinion, it's the best color option of the Pro models. I do also have deep purple, and that's probably next on my list, but I think the black one just looks the cleanest, and so I'm putting this number one on my color list. Apple also added a few new exclusive features for the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max last September when it came out. So we're specifically talking about the dynamic island, the always-on display, and that new 48 megapixel sensor. So the dynamic island, that's a feature that got a lot of praise when Apple first introduced it, especially by me. I thought it looked really, really cool. And I think it works really well, but I feel like a lot of people either love it and use it a lot, and then the rest probably just don't really care after, a few initial uses of the dynamic island. I think it just becomes another thing. And I fall into the latter. I don't mind it. I like that it's there, but I hardly ever pay attention to it. I don't ever specifically do something on my phone so that it's in the dynamic island, except for maybe one specific thing. And that's I use the Flighty app when I fly. And that has a dynamic island tracker for what gate you're going to be at and how long you have until your flight departure or how long you have left if you're currently in the air. And those are really nice things to have in the dynamic island. And also I fly United quite a bit, and so that recently got an update in the app to where there's also a live activity, and I believe that goes in the island, but I don't really remember. But Flighty for sure is my main flight tracking app. If you don't know that app, definitely check it out, especially if you fly a lot. Even apps like Uber and Lyft use the dynamic island to tell you how far away your ride is from picking you up or how much longer you have in your ride. Those are really useful ways to implement dynamic island into your everyday life, or at least into the times where you would really want to actually use it. But really for me, it's been travel, and that's about it. So dynamic island, I wouldn't call it a bust, but I wouldn't say it's a feature that I would absolutely run out and go buy an iPhone specifically for. Also, I thought Apple would have spent more time on it during the WWDC keynote and introduced some new features for dynamic island, but ultimately that didn't really happen. This feature is expected to also trickle down to the entire iPhone 15 lineup. So unless Apple introduces new features when they introduce the new iPhone 15, it's really just been ignored for this year. So I'm curious to see if any new functionality would be coming in the next month or two, or maybe we have to wait for iPhone or for iOS 18. Now, always on display has been excellent in my opinion, and I do use it all the time. I love being able to see if I have notifications or widgets that I need to interact with now, having the time and date just kind of there at all times when you're on your desk and you're just looking at your phone. I love it, but I don't know how much of an impact it's having on my battery life. And so we're kind of going to transition into what I don't like about the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, and that's just been battery, because battery life has been just downright terrible. And I don't know exactly if my always on display is impacting battery life. And if it is, then I gotta say it's another feature that I can maybe do without, because I just don't want to have to recharge my phone before the end of the day. There have been plenty of people posting some pretty significant battery degradation in the last 11 months. So that's also concerning. We're talking like 89, 90% battery health. For me, I'm at 99%. I don't know how, but I am. And I exclusively wirelessly charge my phone via MagSafe. Don't know if that has a factor into it, but obviously since installing iOS 17, that's been a thing. But even before that, I still noticed I'm having, roughly 10 to 20% battery at the end of the day when it used to be around 40 to 50. Obviously, again, iOS 17 has impacted battery, but even before that, I was noticing some pretty bad battery drain, and it's just been getting worse over the last few months. Now, the iPhone 15 should have a bigger battery, so that hopefully will help out. But on my Pro Max, I can barely get through the day again. And when I use the Pro for those weeks where I want to try to do a smaller size, I would have to charge my phone by like 1 p.m. So I do, again, exclusively charge via MagSafe every night. I have all of the smart charging and optimization features turned on. So yeah, I don't know what it is, but hopefully battery improvements are on the horizon with the iPhone 15. Now, before we get to the final main part of the iPhone 14 Pro long-term review, which is the camera, I do just want to quickly touch on a few other things. Performance has been fantastic for like 95% of daily use. But as temps get hotter outside, or as my battery drains more and I'm needing to charge more, I've noticed that my phone is getting hotter. And when it gets hot, the iPhone just doesn't know what to do with itself sometimes, and it becomes an absolute nightmare to deal with. It's not all the time, but when it does overheat and thermal management isn't at its absolute best, there's tons of lag, it doesn't recognize touch input sometimes, etc. It's what you expect when your phone is overheating, but I feel like lately it's been overheating a little bit more than normal. Obviously, I'm outside more, it's hotter temperatures, and so I think that's contributing, but it's also just a good reminder to give your phone a break a little bit sometimes, especially when it's overheating. Just put it down, step away, come back in like 10 minutes, and you should be fine. But it's been happening at like the worst times, and so, you're noticing it a little bit more. So something to keep in mind if you're overheating your phone quite a bit, just like put it down, give it a break. But maybe better thermal management in the iPhone 15, maybe that'll help. Who knows? But another thing I wanted to point out. Otherwise, again, performance champ, absolutely no issues besides just like random iOS 17 beta bugs. But I did that to myself by just running with the beta since day one. Also, shout out to the peak outdoor brightness of being like 2000 nits. In the summertime, I'm outside, I'm wearing sunglasses, it's bright out there. That extra just 2000 nits coming in at the right time, just chef's kiss. It's amazing. It does lead to your phone getting hotter, so you don't want to be doing that for a long period of time, but usually for me, when it's doing the peak outdoor brightness of those beautiful 2000 nits, I have had no problems. So just an underrated feature that Apple introduced in the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, and I absolutely love when that kicks on. It's a lifesaver. I can actually see my phone outside. All right, so the cameras. I'm going to keep this short, but the iPhone still remains one of, if not the best cameras that you can get. Well, the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, that is. And so this year we got the 48 megapixel camera. And, that leads to the ability of taking 48 megapixel raw photos. That's not something I did a whole lot. Obviously, when I was testing it, I did it a lot, but I have not done it since then. Not sometimes, because I do like to edit photos using Lightroom, and so being able to have raw photos really makes the editing experience like a really good one, and you can fine-tune a lot of details and make your photos just even better. But if you don't know how to edit, or if you don't have any interest in editing like that, then you don't really need to take 48 megapixel raw photos. But the images just in general have been amazing out of this new lens. I'm obviously excited to see the improvements in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max with the new periscope lens. So that's really been my only gripe with the telephoto lens, is that it's just been a 3x optical for like forever now. And so the rumored, 6x optical is going to be a nice step up, obviously. And with that said, I'm not sure how much more the iPhone 15 is going to make you want to say, yeah, I should totally ditch my 14 Pro to go to the 15 Pro. So it's probably not the correct upgrade for you. There are going to be some nice improvements, and maybe it might sway you, but ultimately, if you want to be cost effective and just what I'm looking at here in terms of rumors, I don't know that it's going to be like a massive upgrade for the Pro Max to go to the 14 to the 15, but anything else, yeah, 15's looking like a good phone, but I'd even probably want to recommend the 14 Pro and the Pro Max because, again, I've just been absolutely loving this phone after 1 year of daily use. But I would love to hear from you. Are you an iPhone 14 Pro or Pro Max user? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you thinking about getting an iPhone 14 Pro or Pro Max in 2023 here, especially with the iPhone 15 Pros and just the iPhone 15 in general on the horizon? Again, let me know in those comments down below. This has been Dan with MacRumors. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around in the next video.